Hey everybody, Melissa here, the Unlikely Hiker. I hope everyone is doing really good today. Today I want to talk about the Flextail Zero Pump. I ordered this Flextail pump back in September when they did the Kickstarter campaign, and I did receive this about a month and a half ago. Since then I've had the opportunity to use it about a dozen times, and I thought I would give you my opinions on it. Some of the specs on this little guy: it's about 1 inch by 3 inches, thereabouts. Its claimed weight is 1.20 ounces. That is without the battery or the nozzle. It claims a runtime of about 25 minutes, and the inflation and deflation pressure is 2.5 kPa, which is roughly the equivalent of 0.36 psi. It has an inflation flow of about 180 liters per minute. Now, those are all the claimed specs that are on the website. You can check that out for yourself if you like. But what I wanted to talk about was my impressions with this. So my first impressions on this is it does feel pretty sturdy. It feels like it was made with quality parts. It is, in fact, very light. It takes up a much smaller footprint, in my opinion, something a little bit more palatable than the last version. It does not have that shrill sound of the predecessors that really hurt your ears, and the components fit really well together and they don't come apart when you're trying to use it. This pump comes with all the nozzles that you need, a little lanyard. This little nozzle did not come with a leash on it, not sure why, but all this comes with the pump, including the battery and a USB-C charging cable. Like I said, over the past month and a half or so, I've had the opportunity to use this guy about a dozen times. So what are the pros of the Flextail Zero? It's small. It's definitely quieter than the last one. The battery is replaceable on this, and you can replace it with a rechargeable USB-C or rechargeable battery that goes in, like a wall unit, or you can put a regular battery in here. I do not know what the weight differences are on all of those. I have the rechargeable USB-C battery that comes with the unit. It does have a very long battery life. I've used this about a dozen times and it's still going strong. It is in fact a hands-free design, which is definitely an upgrade from the last one. That was kind of one of my main complaints of the last one, that and the sound, is you'd have to hold it in place, which doesn't seem like a big deal until the end of a day when you've been backpacking and you got to sit there hunched over trying to fill up your pad. The nozzles are made of silicone and they fit on top of the unit itself. It has a little leash on there. So I think that's great because it's going to minimize losing it. I never did lose any on the last one, but it definitely was always a concern. I did try this out on 3 different pads, and the nozzles that I used for the 3 different pads all worked very, very well. They stayed in place, no issues. So what are some of the cons of this? It's really expensive. Over $50 for this little pump, I think, is definitely pushing it. Since I got it on the Kickstarter, I think I paid around $35 to $40, I think, is a max that I would be willing to pay for this. It does feel well made and sturdy. Since I'm not super familiar with the Flextail brand, I just don't know if their products can really justify a cost like that. There's a part of me that feels like they're really kind of taking advantage of people that want to have comforts like this in trail, but save as much weight as possible. Another con, it doesn't have that extra light. In my opinion, I don't really care about that. It was a nice little feature. I did put a loop in the top of my X-Mid tent so that I could hang the other pump, but I have a headlamp, so it kind of was a duplicate item. So for the added bulk and weight, did I really need an extra light? Probably not. I do believe with the old pump, you also could top off the battery on your phone. I could be wrong about that, but I did think that that was one thing you could do. Again, I guess that's a con. It was never anything I used. I always carry a battery bank, so I don't know. I'm going to say it's a con just in case, but again, it's just something that I didn't need or use. The next 2 cons, in my opinion, are some of the bigger ones, is I definitely cannot dry my hair with this, and although it says you can stoke a fire, it doesn't come out with the same force due to the nozzle size as the old one. The old one had a little tiny spout and it really directed the air to the base of the fire. I have not used this with a campfire yet, so the jury is still out whether it is as efficient as the last one. I could still see this working for it, just not as good. The weight on this little bad boy on my scale is 1.7 ounces. That is with the included USB-C rechargeable battery. It's 2 ounces when you include the nozzle. This is the one for the tensor that's on here right now. The nozzles weigh between 0.3 and 0.4 ounces depending on the nozzle and the size. I suppose if you wanted to shave off a little bit more weight, you could cut the little leash off here. That's up to you. I personally wouldn't do that. I did do some non-scientific tests with this. I filled up my Nemo Tensor EC. That's a regular wide pad, and the time it took to inflate it was approximately 1 minute 27 seconds. And that's using the N1 nozzle, which is 0.3 ounces. Then I moved on and I inflated my Big Agnes Rapide SL. That is a short regular pad that uses the B1 nozzle, which weighs 0.4 ounces. And that took 1 minute 10 seconds to inflate. And finally, I used the F2 nozzle, which weighs 0.3 ounces, and I filled up my Thermarest Neo Air Uberlight, and that took 1 minute 5 seconds. The Uberlight is a regular sleeping pad. According to the instructions on the Flextail website, the Thermarest Neo Air Uberlight has the twin valve setup, and I should have been using the F1 nozzle, but I couldn't figure out how that fit, and the F2 fit perfectly, so that's the one I used. One thing I did note with that valve style is it was a little challenging to turn this to shut the valve off completely before removing this so that you could lock the air out. Just so you know, that was something I noticed, kind of a downside. But if you're careful and you just top it off with your mouth, I don't see a real issue with it. And also for the twin valve setup, I could see where the deflate feature might be good for this to help get the air out a little bit faster perhaps, or a little bit more complete, since it is harder to get the air out of that valve style pad. And do please note, all of my times and weights are approximate to everything that I use here. I'm not making any perfect claims. All things considered, I do think that this pump is an upgrade to the previous versions. The sound is much easier to deal with, and it inflates and probably deflates in a really reasonable amount of time. Not the advertised amount of time, but honestly, since I've used this at least a dozen times, it could be because the battery is moving towards the end of its charge. I'm not sure, but I still didn't think it was an unreasonable amount of time it took to inflate it. And I have not used the deflate feature on this. It seems like it might be a little weak to really pull some air out, but in aiding a twin valve setup, like I said a few minutes ago, I think that this might work okay for that. Otherwise, that's not a feature I would even use, and that's just because you're using more battery, and if you have the other valve style, you can just dump that air right out. I just think it's a little useless. I am hoping that this pump will last a reasonable amount of time. Flextail really has been growing exponentially in the past few years, and I really hope that they didn't skimp on these adorable little pumps that they're charging over $50 for. I did kind of have a negative experience with the Kickstarter campaign that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. I was supposed to receive this in November, and I didn't get it until it was after Christmas, around New Year. So that took significantly longer to get. I guess I can't blame them. They came out with a product that was really attractive to a lot of different people, and they probably wanted it for the holidays or whatever, for their winter camping. I do think that they're onto something here, and I do believe that this is a really solid product. I really like everything about it, to be very honest with you, and I look forward to using it all summer, and hopefully I'll do another video to talk to you about how this has been lasting. So that's what I got for you today. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you got some value out of it, please hit that subscribe button, like the video, leave a comment if you have any questions, okay? Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.